Suspicious as shit that the CIA pulled this book off the shelves before people ever had the chance to read it. It's by Chan Thomas. It's called The Adam and Eve Story, and it's supposedly what's going to happen at the end of the world. Second suspicious as shit thing is that it's 45 pages, but that is a sanitized copy from the CIA that was released in 2013. You can see at the top of this page, that's where I got these from. You're welcome to go to CIA.gov and find the entire document, well, the sanitized version of the document. But let's look at the first 6 pages and see what Chan Thomas predicted. This is the not suspicious at all intro that we have. Like Noah, like Adam and Eve, this too will come to pass. And then we get to page 3. Once we get to page 3, that's when all hell breaks loose on Earth. So to sum up page 3, we have hurricanes, earthquakes, America underwater, right? Destroyed. Within 3 hours, the fantastic wall of water moves across the continent, burying the wind-ravaged land under 2 miles of seething water coast to coast. What the fuck? And then on this page, he basically just says, it's not just America that gets fucked up, it's everywhere that gets fucked up. So on this page, he finally explains what the hell is going on. Now, the earthquakes and the hurricanes and all that good jazz that came along with it, that lasted for about 6 days. On the 7th day, the horrendous rampage is over, the Arctic Ice Age is ended, and a new Stone Age begins. A new era. Yes, the cataclysm has done its work well. The greatest population regulator of all does once more for man what he refuses to do for himself. I can see why the CIA pulled this. Remember, it was written in 1965, but suppressed by the CIA until 2013 when they released a sanitized version of it. So go ahead and pause to read the first page of The Great Floods if you would like, but basically what Chan is saying is that they're just like all of those that came before us, and then he talks about the science behind it and the scientists that have been trying to figure this out since the 1800s. This is what Chan predicted caused the cataclysm, caused the Great Floods. Pause to read the entire page if you would like to, but this is the page where he describes why the earth did what it did and why all hell broke loose. Once he knew what was happening, he wanted to know why it was happening. Valid. And he finds out, so apparently once every few thousand years, neutral matter escapes from the 860-mile radius inner core into a 1,300-mile thick molten outer core, and there is a literal atomic explosion inside the earth. Fucking wonderful. The explosion in the high-energy layer of the outer core disrupts completely the electrical and magnetic structure in both the molten outer core and the outer 60-mile thick molten layer. Finally, the ice caps are allowed to pull the shell of the Earth around the interior with the shallow molten layer, lubricating the shift all the way. That sounded... He goes on to say that you can see the ice ages are not a matter of advancing or retreating ice, simply a location of ice, and they're all different on the Earth at different times. And then he goes on to give you more examples. Like all of these throughout history, demonstrating great cataclysms. In the very beginning of this book, Chan gives us the cross sections of Earth. Now, for all hell to break loose on Earth like he is predicting, that outer core that you see right there is what's going to shift and have the explosion, taking the crust with it, and the crust would shift. So north would go to south, south would go to north, everything will be all screwed up. Our boy Chan comes with receipts, and he said, I did the legwork, don't you worry. He gives us several examples of how the Earth shows signs of a global cataclysm that happened 11,000 years ago, and a global cataclysm that happened 6,000 years ago. And these receipts do tell a story of a cataclysm happening. You can see right here the computable age of Antarctica and Greenland ice caps is about 6,500 years. We have the legends of the long night, 7 days of darkness. And if you remember in the first video, I said it takes about 7 days for all this to go down. And don't worry, he keeps going. He gives us more examples, like the correlation of the ice ages and quick extinctions the world over. So we're talking woolly mammoths, dinosaurs, saber-toothed tigers, things like that that just aren't around anymore, went extinct with the Big Bang. And then he says the overwhelming evidence when put in order gives a dramatic picture of which areas have been at the North Pole when they moved to the pole and how long they were there. So the reason this is called the Adam and Eve story is because Noah, Adam and Eve, Osiris, Zeus, Vishnu, all of these have deeper meanings, and all of them are kind of on the same wavelength if you think about it. All of these past religions or current religions have some story of a flood or an apocalyptic event. It makes sense now. A lot of you may be wondering why this is even called the Adam and Eve story, and we're about to get into that. So that's what the 3rd chapter is all about. It's called The Story, Enigma, Pursuit, Unraveling, and he's unraveling the Adam and Eve story and where it originally came from. The next couple of pages are just Ancestry.com for Moses and his brother Aaron and how we got the first tellings of Adam and Eve, and then how we got the retellings of Adam and Eve. More Ancestry.com vibes. Feel free to pause and read. Finally, our boy gets to his point in the very last paragraph, saying that the Adam and Eve story was verbally handed down by Ezra to 5 scribes. Okay, so these 5 scribes were written in a language that nearly is identical to the Mayan language. It's old hieroglyphics called Naga. So that means when Moses and Aaron were interpreting these scribes, they could have taken it literally and they could have taken some things wrong. So that leads them to not being able to read the symbolism of Naga glyphs. In addition to reading them literally, Moses and Aaron, and possibly Ezra, read into the Adam and Eve story the social and religious attitudes of their day. This is my favorite part of the document by far because it says that Moses, Aaron, possibly Ezra, misinterpreted the story of Adam and Eve, so they shouldered Eve with the responsibility for the downfall of all mankind. And this led to women being regarded as the root of all sin, a lowly creature, and her birth was only recorded as an exception. So this is where he breaks down the individual aspects of the original Adam and Eve story and how they point to a global cataclysm. So the tree of life that everyone is so familiar with, that wasn't actually a tree. It symbolized a mother continent, a parent civilization lasting thousands of years longer than ours of today. Now, the serpent that we always hear about wasn't actually a snake. It was just the water that surrounded this mother continent. And then right here we get to where the flaming sword was the symbol of fire, where the 60-mile thick shell breaking through to the surface during a tumble, a literal hell, is the most probable the origin of man's concept of hell, as a matter of fact. And then here's where we get a little wild. Now back to the tree. Fruit growing on the tree symbolized the original mankind, which settled the mother continent ages before Adam and Eve. So it wasn't actually an apple, right? It symbolized mankind on the continent of life. Their eating of the fruit tells us that they were descended from this original mankind of the continent. Eve eating first signifies that she was the generation after Adam, making her his daughter. So Eve was Adam's daughter? So he's telling us that Eve was Adam's daughter, not the first woman on earth. Let's see where he got that from. So in the very top paragraph, he's describing the glyph of creation and how it was interpreted originally. And he says that there are 3 figures on there. The top one looks like a sleeping / unalived person. There wasn't a clear distinction in the hieroglyphics for a sleeping / unalived person, so that figure looks like that. The second figure is a male figure. The third figure at the bottom is a female. Middle paragraph is the original interpretation of the hieroglyphic, where we have Adam and Eve coming from the tree of life, and they are the first humans on earth, right? But then we get to this third paragraph, and he says there's a slight hitch in that story. The top figure, whether it's sleeping or unalive, it does not matter, is a female and not a male. So it can't be like God / Jesus or whatever, and then Adam takes the rib and then Eve, right? It's not that. And then he adds in that in the hieroglyphics, the curved lines denote parentage rather than ribs. So more reasonably, it seems that the top figure is an unalived female whose offspring by the male middle figure was the bottom female figure, the mother of the Hebrews. So you have the top figure, the Mother Earth, mother of life, give it or whatever you want to call it, the mother. And then you have Adam, who was made from her, and then Eve, that was made from Adam. And I'm sorry, but that absolutely blows my mind. So pause to read the remix of the Adam and Eve story, with Eve being the daughter and Adam being the father of her. The very last paragraph tells us what the next chapter is going to be about. He's going to be re-envisioning Genesis 1, 2, and 3 through the lens of a global cataclysm happening 11,500 years ago.